I know that the ones who love us will miss us.
Few stars in Hollywood carry the quiet strength and mystery of Keanu Reeves. Known for his humility, kindness, and deep sense of reflection, Keanu has long been considered the rare soul in an industry obsessed with fame and noise. From The Matrix to John Wick, his characters have become symbols of endurance and loss, mirroring the pain and perseverance of the man himself. But now, at this stage of his life, Keanu's latest words have left fans stunned and heartbroken. In a recent somber statement, he spoke of closing a chapter forever, calling it his final sentence. Those who've followed his journey, through tragedy, triumph, and decades of reinvention, immediately sensed the weight behind his words. Was he talking about his career? His health? Or was this Keanu's way of saying goodbye to something even deeper? A part of himself that had carried too much pain for too long. The truth behind his farewell runs deeper than headlines could capture. It's a story about a man who has given his all to the world, only to realize that peace doesn't come from success, but from letting go. As the world listens to Keanu's final haunting words, one thing becomes clear. This isn't just a goodbye to Hollywood. It's a goodbye to a lifetime of suffering, loneliness, and unanswered questions. And for millions who've grown to love him, that realization hurts more than any movie ending ever could. Before he was Neo, before he was John Wick, Keanu Reeves was just a quiet boy from a turbulent background, a kid who learned early that life could be both beautiful and brutally unfair. Born in Beirut in 1964 and raised between Canada and the U.S., Keanu's childhood was anything but stable. His father left when he was just 3 years old, leaving his mother to raise him and his sisters alone. Constant moves, new schools, and emotional chaos became his reality. But in the middle of all that instability, young Keanu discovered something that would save him: storytelling. Movies, theater, and music became his refuge, a place where he could escape, express, and transform pain into purpose. When he first came to Hollywood in the 1980s, no one quite knew what to make of him. He was soft-spoken, thoughtful, and completely unlike the loud, confident stars of the time. But that uniqueness became his strength. From Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure to Point Break and Speed, Keanu's rise was quiet but steady, built not on ego, but on honesty. Yet even as fame grew, life continued to test him. Behind the camera flashes and premieres, Keanu carried an unimaginable burden of loss. In 1999, just as The Matrix made him one of the most recognizable faces in the world, his longtime partner, Jennifer Syme, gave birth to their stillborn daughter. The tragedy shattered them both. 2 years later, Syme herself died in a car accident. A heartbreak from which Keanu has quietly admitted he never fully recovered. For most people, that kind of pain would destroy them. But Keanu never lashed out, never retreated into bitterness. Instead, he turned that grief inward, transforming it into art, empathy, and quiet resilience. He became known not just for his roles, but for his humanity. Crew members told stories of Keanu giving away millions from his Matrix earnings to special effects and makeup teams. Fans shared videos of him giving up his subway seat, buying coffee for strangers, and listening to people like they truly mattered. In an age of celebrity arrogance, Keanu became something sacred, a reminder that kindness is strength. But beneath that calm, wise exterior, something deeper brewed. Friends close to him often spoke of how he lived between worlds, the world of fame and the world of silence. He preferred motorcycles to mansions, solitude to spotlights. To him, happiness wasn't about red carpets or cameras. It was about peace, something he had chased all his life, yet never quite found. Now, as he grows older, that search for peace seems to have reached a final point. In a recent interview, Keanu hinted that he's ready to step away, to let the story end where it should. Those words, simple yet heavy, feel like a man finally ready to rest after decades of carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. For Keanu Reeves, life has never been about fame. It has always been about meaning, and perhaps the moment has come for him to write his final chapter, on his own terms. For the millions who see Keanu Reeves on screen, fierce, composed, and unstoppable. It's easy to forget that behind those calm eyes lies a story filled with pain. The world sees him as the ultimate action hero, but Keanu's greatest battles were never fought with guns or fists. They were fought in silence, against grief, loneliness, and time. In interviews, Keanu often pauses before answering, not because he's shy, but because he chooses his words carefully. He's a man who's seen how words can both heal and wound. When he speaks of loss, it's with a gentle sorrow that seems to echo from somewhere deep within. "Grief changes shape," he once said quietly, "but it never ends." Those who know his past understand just how true that is. After losing his daughter and his partner, Keanu didn't retreat into the world of celebrity privilege. Instead, he withdrew from fame altogether. While others built empires and headlines, he rode his motorcycle through empty streets, disappearing into the city like a shadow. He took long walks alone, spent birthdays quietly, and worked only on projects that meant something to him. Friends who have known him for decades describe him as present, but distant. He listens more than he talks, and when he smiles, it's often tinged with sadness, as though he carries memories he doesn't wish to share. He's the kind of man, one friend said, who's learned to live with ghosts. And yet, despite all he's lost, Keanu's life has never been defined by tragedy alone. It has been defined by how he responded to it. Instead of running from pain, he embraced it as a teacher. That quiet resilience became his superpower, a force that allowed him to keep creating, to keep connecting, and to keep believing that love, even in its most broken form, is still worth everything. This philosophy shaped every role he took. In The Matrix, he played a man waking up to the painful truth of his existence. In John Wick, he channeled grief and vengeance into something almost poetic. A broken man who found purpose through loss. These characters weren't fiction. They were reflections of his own journey. Every punch, every tear, every line of dialogue felt personal, as though Keanu wasn't just acting, but confessing. Despite his fame, Keanu's personal life remained astonishingly humble. He lived modestly, often in a small apartment, despite having the wealth to buy anything he wanted. He traveled alone, ate at diners, and treated everyone, from movie executives to crew members, with the same quiet respect. To him, kindness wasn't a performance. It was a way of surviving. And in recent years, as the world rediscovered its admiration for him, Keanu seemed both grateful and detached. He never courted the internet's favorite man status that fans gave him. Instead, he smiled softly and returned to work, as though praise meant little compared to peace. But peace for Keanu Reeves has always come at a price. Those who know him best say he's been searching for closure, for a way to say goodbye not to the world, but to the pain that has followed him since youth. So when he recently said that his sentence is final and that it's time to let the story end, fans understood it as something deeper. Perhaps it's not about quitting movies or retiring from fame. Perhaps it's about a man finally finding the courage to forgive the past, to release the grief that has lived beside him for so long. In that quiet farewell, Keanu wasn't just closing a career chapter. He was closing a wound. For more than 3 decades, Keanu Reeves has lived under the unrelenting spotlight of Hollywood, a world that thrives on noise, chaos, and reinvention. Yet through it all, Keanu remained different. He was never the type to chase fame, boast about success, or build an empire of attention. His quiet presence became his greatest rebellion against a system obsessed with spectacle. But now his words, "It's time to let the story end," echo like a man closing a door gently behind him. To many, it feels like more than a simple career decision. It feels like closure. In interviews leading up to the release of his last John Wick film, Keanu spoke openly about exhaustion, not physical, but emotional. "I've given everything I can to these stories," he said softly, "and I think it's time to rest." There was no bitterness in his tone, only calm acceptance, as though he had reached a point of peace with what he's accomplished. Over the years, Keanu's work became more than entertainment. It became therapy, a way of expressing his inner world through motion and silence. The gunfights, the heartbreak, the long, silent stares between scenes, they weren't just cinematic choices. They were confessions. In John Wick, when he spoke of loss and the endless cycle of pain, it wasn't a performance. It was personal truth. And perhaps that's why his films resonate so deeply. Audiences didn't just see a character. They saw Keanu, the man who endured tragedy after tragedy, yet never surrendered to darkness. But even the strongest souls need rest. After decades of giving pieces of himself to every story, Keanu began to pull back. He stopped attending many Hollywood events, skipped interviews, and spent more time on quiet trips, reading, painting, and simply existing away from the camera's glare. He once said in an interview, "I've lived so many lives on screen, maybe it's time to just live one off it." That simple sentence may be the heart of his decision. Keanu Reeves has spent his life exploring what it means to be human through the eyes of fictional characters. Now, he wants to discover that truth in real life. Those close to him say he has no grand farewell planned, no press conference, no retirement announcement. Just a slow, graceful fade into privacy. Like everything Keanu does, it's not about drama. It's about peace. He's found solace in simplicity, riding his motorcycle through quiet roads, visiting art galleries, or sitting in small cafes with friends. He's also deeply devoted to Alexandra Grant, the artist and writer who has been his companion for several years. With her, Keanu has found something rare: understanding. Their connection isn't built on fame or image, but on creativity, kindness, and shared solitude. For a man who's lived through constant loss, this peace feels like redemption. And maybe that's what he meant when he said his sentence is final. Maybe it's not a goodbye to life or art, but to the suffering that defined so much of his past. In a world obsessed with endless sequels and never-ending fame, Keanu Reeves is choosing something extraordinary: an ending. Not because he has nothing left to give, but because he finally understands that real strength lies in walking away gracefully. For his fans, the thought of never seeing him on screen again is heartbreaking. But for Keanu, it may be the first time he's truly free to live, love, and exist without pretending to be anyone but himself. As one director put it, Keanu doesn't need to act anymore. His life has already told the most beautiful story of all. When the world first heard Keanu Reeves say, "It's time to go," the words carried a quiet heartbreak. He didn't announce it on a stage or through a dramatic farewell video. Instead, it came softly, through a rare, intimate interview. No lights, no crowd, no theatrics. Just Keanu being Keanu, humble, reflective, and deeply human. He spoke not as a movie star, but as a man who had finally made peace with his own journey. "I've lived many lives," he said, "but I think I'm ready to live one that belongs only to me." Those words broke millions of hearts. Fans who grew up watching Speed, The Matrix, and John Wick couldn't imagine Hollywood without him. But as Keanu explained, this wasn't an ending driven by pain. It was one born from understanding. Over the years, Keanu has lost much: friends, family, love. Yet through it all, he became a symbol of resilience. He transformed suffering into empathy, pain into peace. "You learn," he said, "that grief never leaves you. But you also learn that love never does either." That line became the essence of his goodbye. He shared how he spent recent years focusing on quiet joys: painting with Alexandra Grant, tending a small garden, writing poetry, and producing small independent projects that mean something to him personally. The man, once known for explosive stunts and relentless fight scenes, has found comfort in stillness. "Stillness teaches you," he said. "It's where you finally hear yourself." One journalist who was present during that interview described the atmosphere as spiritual. There was no sadness in Keanu's voice, only calm, gratitude, and warmth. He smiled often, recalling the people who shaped his path. "Every person I met, every role I played, left a piece inside me. I'm carrying all of them wherever I go next." Hollywood insiders say Keanu has already begun stepping away quietly. He's turned down major roles, halted long-term projects, and even declined blockbuster franchises that offered him record-breaking paychecks. For him, it's no longer about legacy or fame. It's about peace. He's found meaning in supporting small artists, funding cancer research and helping people anonymously, something he's done for years without publicity. To this day, stories continue to emerge of his quiet generosity, buying motorcycles for stunt crews, paying crew members medical bills, or giving strangers a helping hand on the street. As one of his longtime friends put it, Keanu doesn't give for recognition. He gives because that's who he is. His final public words, shared at a charity event, brought the room to tears. He said softly, "If I've learned anything, it's that kindness is the only real legacy we leave behind. Be good to each other. The rest will fade, but that never will." Those words have since spread across the internet like wildfire, a farewell message that feels like a blessing. Fans flooded social media with tributes, artwork, and personal stories of how Keanu's movies, and more importantly, his humanity, changed their lives. And maybe that's the true power of Keanu Reeves. He never needed to be loud to be heard. His humility became his voice, his silence, his greatest message. So as he steps away from the world that made him a legend, he leaves behind something more lasting than fame. An example. An example of how to live with grace, love deeply, and say goodbye with dignity. It's rare in Hollywood to see someone walk away without bitterness, scandal, or regret. But Keanu has always been rare. He taught the world that sometimes the most powerful sentence isn't one filled with words. It's the quiet truth of knowing when your story is complete. As he once said, looking out over a sunset on a film set, "The light fades, but the love stays." That's enough for me.